The movie opens with a young, pretty girl looking uncomfortable at a party. She's intoxicated and not feeling good. Her eyes blink repeatedly as if she's trying very hard to stay awake. Stumbling to her feet, she tries to leave the party only to fall in the middle of the dance floor. The girl's name is Margaret and she's the princess of Norway. Margaret is only a teenager, but she has a lot of responsibilities due to her station. Her parents put a lot of pressure on her and she's always being scrutinized by the media. She's hurried to the hospital, her mind jumbled from all the substances she took at the party. Her family is there, but she calls for her best friend, Ingrid. When she wakes up next, under the glaring lights of a hospital room, her parents are there staring at her with disappointment. Her doctor lists illegal substances found in her blood. Not knowing his words are like a sentence for Margaret. She has flashbacks of the party, moments she had with a tall, blonde boy, and the memories aren't good. They make Margaret feel even worse. After the doctor leaves, her mother, an austere woman, asserts her authority over Margaret. With a stoic expression, she demands Margaret never bring shame to her family again. She reminds Margaret that her actions carry repercussions that extend beyond herself. Her father, the king of the country, cannot say anything to her. He looks disappointed and sad, and his silence hurts Margaret more than her mother's words ever could. They don't ask if she's fine or what happened to her at the party. They are more worried about the press and what they are going to say about their family than Margaret's mental health. Their indifference is like a punch in her gut, swallowed whole by a pervasive sense of loneliness. She finds herself engulfed in its suffocating embrace. The following day, Margaret puts on her mask to face the world. Her makeup is flawless, her clothes stylish. There is not a hair out of place. She's the picture of poise and grace that most people envy. Deep inside, though, she's a nervous mess. She's sinking into a sea of anxiety and panic that no one can save her from. Her brother, Cale, tries to assure her that no one is going to remember what happened to her. She knows that is a false platitude, but she puts on a smile. When they arrive at school, Cale's girlfriend, Lena, rudely asks if the hospital found anything in her blood. Margaret only stares at her unflinchingly until the girl apologizes. It's been barely a few minutes and Margaret is already tired of the school. Everyone stares at her as she walks to her locker. People are pointing and discussing what happened to her. Needless to say, she's the main subject in the gossip mill. The only person genuinely happy to see her is Ingrid, her best friend. As they walk together to their classroom, the boy she was with at the party approaches her. Margaret has flashbacks of him again and panics a little. His name's Gustav. He tries talking to her about the party, but she cuts him off. She doesn't want to remember it or talk about it. Ingrid is confused that she's acting weird, but Margaret brushes her off when she asks. Another boy approaches her, but this one Margaret is happy to see him. His name's Arnie and he's one of her closest friends. Arnie has a major crush on Margaret, but she doesn't seem interested in him in the same way. He's afraid of confessing to her and being rejected, afraid that it's going to change their friendship. As for Margaret, she loves Arnie and how he always makes her laugh. He's like a ray of sunshine to her darkness, and she's glad she has him in her life. On her way back home with Ingrid, she finally asks what happened to Margaret at the party. She lies and says she doesn't remember. As soon as she says that, she starts having flashbacks of Gustav and for some reason, they make her want to throw up. Margaret is a great actress and her mask rarely slips. Something she learned from an early age. She has a reputation to protect, and she doesn't want to disappoint her parents even more. While talking to Ingrid, she receives a message from a person called Alexander. He's the Prince of Denmark and Margaret has a crush on him. Ingrid thinks he's into her too, and influences Margaret to flirt with him through messages. When they arrive, they meet Margaret's butler, Jens, and he jokes with the girls like a close friend. He knows about Margaret's infatuation with Alexander and he thinks it's cute. Margaret leaves Ingrid in the drawing room and goes to see her mother. The queen suffers from severe anxiety and panic attacks. For that reason, she rarely leaves her chambers and she spends her days sleeping. Margaret hates seeing her mother like that, so fragile and depressed. She opens the curtains of the bedroom and her mother wakes. Margaret tells her mother that she doesn't want to go to the hospital's opening, not after what happened to her. She has to go, though, because the queen is indisposed. The queen goes back to sleep after enforcing that Margaret has to go, and Margaret takes the opportunity to steal her mother's anxiolytic. Outside the bedroom, she furtively takes one pill and hides the rest. She goes back to the drawing room and Ingrid notices that she looks sad. Margaret feels as if her life is falling apart. She's tired and feeling lonely. Her mother is always sleeping, her father barely stays home and her brother is out having fun with his girlfriend. Everyone's ignoring the fact that she has an addiction and she needs help. Ingrid is her lifeline, the only one Margaret feels she can count on. Ingrid comforts her while she cries and freaks out about appearing in public again. Later on, Margaret goes back to the hospital. The press is there, taking pictures of her and the king, and she has to try her hardest to keep the plastic smile on her face. She has flashbacks of the party, of her moments in the hospital, and starts having a panic attack. Nobody notices. She has to rein in her suffocating feelings and put on a shaking smile. Journalists keep asking why she was in the hospital and she doesn't know what to say. Days slip away unnoticed, and with each passing day, Margaret's reliance on pills deepens. They become her lifeline, a way to navigate her tumultuous life. She finds out that they numb her pain and get addicted to the feeling. No one notices there's something wrong with Margaret. One day, she goes to a surprise birthday party and her fake happiness is very genuine. She dances with Arnie and has fun with her friends. When she starts getting too close to Arnie, she shuts down and runs away from him. She doesn't tell him that she's afraid of being taken advantage of again. Arnie goes after her and they sit together for a while. Arnie is a comforting presence to Margaret, and they know each other well. She starts taking confetti from his hair, getting closer in the process, and he sees it as an invitation to kiss her. For a moment, Margaret wonders what it would be like if she surrendered herself to Arnie. When she remembers what happened with Gustav, she pulls back in fear. She's afraid of being vulnerable with someone and getting hurt again. She has more flashbacks of the party. She and Gustav were having fun. He offered her substances and she took it, not realizing that he was recording her. She thought he was just joking around, but then, when they are making out, she has a sliver of sobriety and asks him to erase the video. It's too late by then, as he has already downloaded it to his cloud. Margaret freaks out that he has a video of her in a compromising situation, and runs away from him. Margaret still berates herself for being so stupid. She trusted Gustav too much, and she was intoxicated. The results were not good. Seeing Arnie sad and dejected after her rejection, Margaret quickly runs away. She goes to another part of the party and finds Gustav with his friends. Taking a deep breath, she decides to ask him what happened to the video. Gustav acts friendly and cool with her until she asks him to delete the video. He shows his real character when he subtly threatens her to do what he wants. He invites her to come to his house with him, and she denies it. It's worse than she thought. Margaret starts panicking again, breaths coming short and her body shaking. Her mind is spiraling with what is going to happen if Gustav shares the video. No one notices her. She takes more pills to calm herself down and goes home. A few hours later, she receives a message from Gustav. It's a naked picture of him. She's so disgusted she wants to throw up. She starts writing a message demanding he deletes the video but erases it. She's not confident that he's going to hear her and she doesn't have anyone to support her. The next morning, she's not in a great mood. Her evening was terrible and she wants a moment of peace. Weekend breakfasts are her family's tradition. And when her brother appears with Lena, Margaret is annoyed. Her mother and father aren't there either. To make things worse, Lena keeps squealing and giggling because of Cal. Margaret wants her gun. Seeing them so happy brings a bitter taste to her mouth. When she mentions to Cal that she thought weekend's breakfast was family only, he brushes her off. It hurts, but Margaret stays expressionless. Later on, she has a family meeting with her father, brother, and their assistant. They talk about the Denmark royal family coming to Norway and where they should stay. The prospect of seeing Alexander and spending time with him is too good to pass. Margaret asks for them to spend their holiday there too, saying that it would be good for her mother. The day of their trip, as she is leaving, Margaret notices her father talking to someone on the phone. He has a smile on his face, one that is rare for her to see anymore. She knows he's talking to his mistress, the one he spends most of his time with. During the call, he tells them to go before him and that confirms to Margaret that he's going to spend time with his mistress. In the car with her brother, she asks if he knows anything about who their father was going to meet. But Cal changes the subject. He doesn't care either way. He shows her Arnie's song that is playing on the radio. Margaret is surprised that he released a single and it's really good. She's proud of him. It's a pity that they haven't talked again after their kiss. They arrive at the chalet and meet Alexander's family. Alexander is outside the chalet sunbathing with his shirt opened. Margaret admires him for a moment before approaching. He's very handsome and fit. Margaret feels her heart beating fast and her hands sweating in anticipation. When Alexander notices her, he's genuinely happy to see her. They hug and joke around. Later on, they have dinner together and the mood is light. Even the queen looks happy and full of joy. Alexander's family are old friends of her family. The only person missing from the table is her father. He arrives late, and Alexander's father asks if he has been up to his shenanigans again. The table falls silent. The king awkwardly clears his throat while Margaret stares at him with accusing eyes. The Denmark king quickly corrects himself and the mood goes back to being light with everyone pretending nothing happened. After dinner, Margaret is alone in her room looking through pictures of Alexander. She starts touching herself while staring at them when someone knocks on the door, interrupting her. It's the man himself, Alexander. He's there only to ask if Margaret wants to go skiing with him the next day. She agrees with a stiff smile, trying hard not to cringe with embarrassment. When Alexander leaves, Margaret wants to disappear. They go skiing in the mountains the next day. Margaret is thrilled to spend some time with Alexander. It's everything she wanted. Alex is very pleasant to be with, but when he starts speaking about scandals in the royal family, Margaret starts having another panic attack. His words, mixed with her memories of what she did and what Gustav has, worsen her condition. Alexander notices and tries to help her out. It only works after minutes. Alexander is the first person to see Margaret having a panic attack. She tries to pretend nothing happened again, something she's getting good at. When they are watching the view together after skiing, he asks her if she has had anxiety for a long time. Margaret profusely denies she has anxiety. She refuses to be put in the same place as her mother. She tells Alexander that she had a momentary freak out over the height, but he knows better. Being the gentleman he is, he doesn't push her. Changing subjects, he gives her a chocolate he bought for her. They share it, and for the first time in a long time, Margaret feels at peace. They return to the ski station and Alexander sees Cal there with a group of friends. He wants to go there and say hi, much to Margaret's disappointment. Ingrid and Arnie are there too. Ingrid is excited that Margaret is hanging out with Alexander, and when they have a moment alone, she tells her to go for it. She's sure Alexander likes Margaret, and the princess believes her best friend. After having fun dancing to Arnie's new song, they go back home. There's a get-together that is going to happen at Ingrid's chalet, and Alexander wonders if Margaret wants to go with him. She says yes. He mentions taking a shower first, and she eagerly goes to her bedroom. She has the plan to seduce him, and for that, she puts on brand new lingerie. She quietly goes to Alexander's room and lies down on his bed to wait for him. When he comes back from the bathroom, he's petrified to see Margaret there. He wonders what she's doing there, as if it isn't obvious. Margaret plainly says that she wants to sleep with him, but Alexander doesn't see her like that. When she realizes there's not an ounce of heat in his dark eyes, she wants the ground to open and swallow her whole. It's embarrassing and humiliating. She tries to hide herself and apologizes for her mistake. Alexander carefully tells her that he doesn't feel like that. He sees her like a younger sister. Seeing Margaret looking crestfallen, Alexander tells her that they can forget everything and move on. It's too much to bear, and Margaret quickly runs away. She starts drinking and popping pills in her bedroom. She feels so stupid and embarrassed. She can't believe that she let herself believe that Alexander would be into her. There's only one person to blame for that. Ingrid sends her a message asking how it went, and Margaret is livid. She calls Ingrid a bad word and continues drinking heavily. Alexander appears in her bedroom to inform her that he's going to Ingrid's. He expects she goes too. After more liquid courage, Margaret gets dressed to go to Ingrid's house. Her objective isn't to fraternize with her friends, though. She stomps into her house and asks to talk to Ingrid in private. When they are alone, she tears Ingrid apart, blaming her for her blunder with Alexander. In her mind, Ingrid kept pushing her to make a move on him, even though deep down Margaret knew he didn't like her. Ingrid is shocked and doesn't know what to say to Margaret. She's clearly off her rocker. Margaret calls Ingrid dumb and tells her that she wants space. Ingrid snaps that she's going to give her space and leaves. Not knowing what to do and feeling sad, desperate, and angry, Margaret decides to leave. Instead of going to her driver, she runs away to go to a nightclub. Margaret is intoxicated and beside herself. In the nightclub, she sees Gustav and goes to confront him. Again, he implies that he wants to sleep with her, and only then is he going to delete the video. Margaret yells at him and goes toward the nightclub. The bouncer recognizes her and doesn't let her enter because she doesn't look fine. With nothing else to do, Margaret starts wandering on foot, not knowing where she's going. A car stops close to her on the road, and the driver asks if she's fine. She says she is, but the guy notices she is drunk and alone. It's a dangerous situation. He offers her a ride and Margaret accepts. Instead of giving him her address, she tells him she wants to go to his house to sleep with him. The guy is a nice and honest man. He tells her that she's in no shape to go to a stranger's home. Margaret insists so much that he has no other option. At his apartment, Margaret keeps trying to jump him, but he doesn't want to take advantage of her. She insists a lot, trying to forget the hollow feeling inside her through intimate relations and booze. It's not going to work. The guy takes care of her and she ends up sleeping after throwing up. When she wakes up the next morning, she's confused and afraid that she did something wrong. She quickly gets dressed and leaves the apartment, not even waking the guy to say thanks. She calls the only person who isn't upset with her, Arnie. He comes to get her on his scooter, and Margaret smiles for the first time. It's always great to spend time with Arnie. Thankfully, he isn't acting weird around her anymore. When they arrive at her house, she accidentally drops her pills, and Arnie notices. He warns her that taking pills without a prescription is dangerous, but she gets defensive and closes up. She doesn't want to hear something obvious. Arnie leaves her after saying goodbye, and again Margaret feels lonely. She stays the entire day in her room. The only one to notice her absence is her butler, Jens. He opens the windows in her bedroom to let some light in and encourages her to get up. Alexander is leaving with his family and she has to say goodbye. Her mask is firmly in place when she says goodbye to Alexander. He finds it odd but doesn't say anything. When they all leave, she goes to watch a movie with her mother and brother. It's the first time in ages that they are together like a family. Margaret takes comfort in that, staying close to her mother's warmth. Sadly for her, her brief reprieve doesn't last long. Jens enters the room with a worried look that raises alarms in Margaret's mind. He tells them that a video was leaked and they need to return. Margaret starts crying and having a panic attack, knowing without a doubt that it's her video. Her mother tries to figure out what happened, but she can't even speak. Back home, Margaret stares at her reflection in the mirror while her family's PR tells her how she should act in the press conference. Margaret looks put together, the image of perfection her family wishes to convey. Her eyes tell a different story. She can't stop crying, feeling humiliated again. She knows everyone is going to judge her, the privileged princess using public money to use substances. Not wanting to freak out in front of everyone, Margaret runs from the house. Her mother notices her running from the window and goes after her. When she's far enough, she starts crying over her failure. She feels horrible. The only thing she wants is to crawl into her bed and disappear. The king appears next to her and comforts her. Her father's presence there is enough to make Margaret snap again. She tells him that she's surprised that he left his mistress for a moment to be there with her. Her father denies having a mistress. He has an affair with a man, not a woman. Margaret stares at him in disbelief. She asks if her mother knows, not seeing her mother approaching them. His father says she does. Margaret can't believe that her parents' marriage is fake. Her father tells her that the man's name is Martin and that the reason he has been away for so long is because Martin is sick. He has a terminal disease. Her mother is finally there with them and Margaret angrily asks if the reason she's so messed up is that they are bad parents. They agree. The queen sadly tells her that they are not normal people. Everything they do is scrutinized and put in check. They have to act accordingly. That's why her father is still married to the queen. Margaret finally gets a chance of taking things off her chest and tells her parents off. She says that she feels lonely, that she's struggling, and no one even cares. Her mother comforts her and says she's strong. She's strong enough to overcome anything. Margaret finally calms down and hugs her parents. They may have made a lot of mistakes with her, but at least they were trying to fix them. She can forgive them for that. Stepping away from them, she gets ready to talk to the journalists. This time, she's going to show her real self. Margaret bravely apologizes and explains that she's only human. She makes mistakes. She feels lonely, depressed, and sad. She has problems that she wants to overcome. She isn't perfect. It's not exactly the speech her PR prepared, but it's the right one. It brings her closer to people when they see she isn't flawless. That the princess also makes mistakes. When the interview is over, she feels as if a weight has been lifted from her shoulders. She doesn't want to wear a mask of happiness anymore. She wants to be herself, with all the flaws. Back at school, people aren't looking at her with judgment. Most people are understanding and some even support her. Gustav looks ashamed at what he caused her, but Margaret only smiles at him. She doesn't want any more trouble. Her group of friends treat her normally and it makes her feel great. Not only that, but Arnie receives an invitation to play at a big concert, and they all celebrate. Margaret is very happy for him. She goes after Ingrid and apologizes for her behavior. She confesses that she felt jealous of Ingrid and how nice she is. Everyone loves her because she has a kind heart and shines bright. Ingrid forgives her and they hug. Instead of going to class, Margaret suggests they skip and go to the park. While they're there, hugging each other and eating ice cream, she finds out that Arnie isn't dating anyone anymore. It sends a surge of hope to her chest because she figured out she likes him. A few days go by and Margaret feels good. On the day of Arnie's concert, she throws away all the pills hidden in her bedroom. When she's leaving the house, she sees her father sitting in the dining room looking lost. She thinks he's angry at her for changing her speech, but he explains that Martin passed away. Margaret comforts him and tells him that he must go to Martin's funeral. She has had enough of the lies and masks. He should do what makes him happy. The king is proud of his daughter's growth and hugs her tight. After that, Margaret meets her friends to go to the concert. There, she extends a white flag to Lena, accepting her as part of her family. She also refuses to drink. When they arrive at the venue of the concert, she goes after Arnie because she knows he's freaking out. She gives him a pep talk, sure that he's going to do great. During the concert, she follows him to the stage. He fumbles a bit at the beginning, and noticing he's nervous, Margaret steps on the stage and starts singing his song. Everyone sings with her and forgets about Arnie's mistakes. They sing together and she finally kisses him in front of everyone. She doesn't care if people judge her or not. She doesn't want to be the perfect princess anymore. She just wants to be herself.